I believe you're already using one or maybe more AI tools. If you're not doing that now, you might do that soon. Or maybe the tools that you are using, they already incorporate some kind of AI support or tooling. On that note, Junie, coding agent from JetBrains was launched yesterday, and you should be able to use it in IntelliJ IDEA. Now, the big question is, how should you use all these AI tools in a way that makes you better at what you do? What are the best practices and do's and don'ts? And our presenter today has amazing demonstrations to show them to you, not just talk through them. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in for another episode of IntelliJ Idea Live Stream. I'm your host, Mala Gupta. And today I'm pleased to welcome Dan Vega.
Mala, hi, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Dan. It's such a pleasure to have you with us every time you are here to present with us. I love to learn from you. Thank you so
Uh,
much for
this is
accepting
a
the invitation.
thank you for having me. This is like my third or fourth time. So this is awesome. I
Yes.
always love coming on these live streams. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun today. I love talking about AI. Probably too much, like everybody else these days, but it is definitely something that's on all developers' minds. So hopefully developers can walk away with something new today. That's always my plan. Like I'm gonna talk for an hour. Hopefully you pick up like one tip. If you do, I'm gonna consider that a success.
I'm sure developers would be more than happy to learn from you, and they will definitely pick up more than one tip from you. And for everyone for just one or two person out there who doesn't know who Dan is an author, speaker, fellow Java champion, developer advocate, YouTuber, blogger, great speaker. Probably Dan will have another session to talk about all the accomplishments that you have. For now, I'll pause. and
Whoa, that's a lot.
Oh
I
yes,
feel
that's
I know I'm busy, but now I feel like yeah, that's there's probably a reason I am busy. That is a lot. So thank you for the
that
wonderful introduction. That's awesome.
definitely. And Dan, before I let you take the stage and start with your presentation, I have a quick question for you. With
All
all
right.
the AI tools you have been using recently, what is one thing that excites you the most about these tools?
Yeah, I think, as developers, we use them a lot for kind of reading and writing code. For me, I love to learn. So I've been using AI as kind of an assistant to learn things, whether it's something new or something I forgot. I go in, you can use AI tools to like create a plan, like a learning path. We'll see an example of that today. Really just to like find a new way to do something. I love to learn, and I feel like it's 10x my learning, and that gets me really excited. So I've been using it a lot for that lately.
That's really exciting because when we learn, we get to grow. So I would not take a lot of time here, and I would let you hop on to your presentation. But before we do that, let me share some quick housekeeping details. Everyone watching, please use the YouTube chat to post your questions. Dan will take breaks to answer your questions, and I will also try to answer your questions as you post them. The most important question, yes, the session will be recorded and hosted to IntelliJ Ideas YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, why haven't you? Please do that now. And if you like today's session, which I am very sure you would, please like the video. And with that, Dan, let me add your screen to the stream. I'll be
All right.
backstage, and all the best to you. Have fun.
Yeah, and everyone, go ahead and ask your questions. We'll try and take some breaks and answer questions, and we'll answer them at the end. But I want to dive right in. And actually, I'm sorry. Let me find out why this is not showing. Let's go back here. Oh, my screen. Sorry about this. That's what I wanted. All right. Um, cool. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan Vega. As Mala said, I'm a Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom. And today we're going to be talking about coding smarter, not harder, AI-powered dev hacks for all. I think as developers, we're constantly looking for ways to improve our productivity and efficiency. AI tools have rapidly transformed how we kind of approach software development, and I'm excited to share some practical ways you can leverage these tools in your daily workflow. As developers, we do so much more than simply writing code. So we're going to get into a lot of that today. I think the question we need to start off with that keeps coming up in every conversation I have with developers is, will AI replace developers? I have some thoughts on this, and I will share that throughout today's presentation. But first, I'd like to start here. AI won't replace developers, but developers who use AI will replace those who don't. I fundamentally believe this, and I know there are a lot of people who are very anti-AI, and I'm not saying that you need to use it 100% of the time, but I think you shouldn't be using it 0% of the time. There should be some kind of happy medium. Today, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to kind of be in that second category. So a little bit more about me. You can find out more about me at danvega.dev. I'm a husband and a father. We live outside of Cleveland, Ohio. As Mo said, I'm a Java champion. I have been doing this a long time. I'm a Spring developer advocate. I'm a soon-to-be author with my good friend Nate Shuda. We have a book called The Fundamentals of Software Engineering, which some people are on the other side of this. Some people are saying with AI, the fundamentals aren't important anymore, and I completely disagree with that. I think now in this time, more than ever, the fundamentals of software engineering are very important. If you're on the O'Reilly platform, you can get access to this book. There are a bunch of chapters in there. There are more being added, and we are looking forward to releasing this book this year. I also have a newsletter. I have a personal newsletter, but I also have one around AI. I love to learn. One of the best ways to learn is to teach it. So you got to learn it once, and then you got to learn it a second time to kind of teach it back to someone. So I've been just kind of rambling and writing some thoughts down on AI in general, not just specific to devs, but just general AI. And I have a free newsletter on that if you're interested in reading more. So I recently discovered something about myself. I wonder how many people out there really enjoy programming. For AI, I've recently discovered that there are things I don't like about programming. I don't like the mundane task of typing out every single character. I enjoy creating things. I like to take ideas and bring them to life. And so for me, AI has really kind of brought the joy of programming back for me. I have found myself hacking on all types of different things over the last year or two. And it's been a lot of fun. So from everything this has really helped me out in every kind of aspect of my job or things that I'm interested in, whether it's writing, creating videos, coding, creating presentations. These images were created from AI, doing research on topics. I found it kind of really helps me in like all aspects of my life. So I want to start here. What is the kind of future of software development? And I think, we started off, will AI replace developers? And I think like we can all kind of agree that there are going to be changes to the software development industry. Yes, we kind of already see them coming, but I don't share the same fear as a lot of people. There might be like a reimagining of what the role looks like, but I think we're only going to need more software developers. I believe that there is going to be a human in the loop for verification and correction of code, steering the system, someone with like domain and product knowledge. But I also believe that programmers should start using AI, being the supervisor of AI, using it as kind of a pair programmer or an assistant to your day-to-day task. Good quote here from Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. I think what AI does, quite frankly, is reduce the floor and raise the ceiling for all of us. So reducing the floor for anyone who wants to get started with software development makes it much easier to get started. But it also raises the ceiling for all of us who are already in software development. We can be more productive. We can be more efficient. Another good quote here from Steve Wozniak: AI will not replace jobs, but will change the nature of work. Developers who can adapt and learn new skills will be in high demand. So I've kind of fundamentally believed this my entire career. Like, I may have been interested in something 23 years ago, but as I've been going along, I've been trying to stay up to date with current trends and what's kind of popular in our industry. And I've adapted. I've learned new things. And I think this is just another thing that we need to learn, right? Something we need to adapt to. So I'm a big fan of kind of learning, and I think as long as you're adaptable in this industry, you can be around forever. So I want to quickly look at how AI is being adopted across the software development industry. These numbers come from some recent studies across thousands of developers and major companies. And what we're seeing is not just experimentation, but real meaningful adoption with measurable results. So let's look at 4 key statistics that show how AI is transforming development. 72% of developers express confidence in AI tools. This is particularly noteworthy as it represents real world experience, not just hype. 92% adoption rate among Fortune 500 companies shows that this isn't just for startups, tech companies, or indie hackers. It's becoming standard across enterprises. And we know as Java developers, we are really into the major enterprise, especially in the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100. Java is everywhere in this space. The 26% productivity increase isn't theoretical. This comes from an MIT study of over 5,000 developers at companies like Microsoft and Accenture. And 3 out of 4 developers are already using or planning to use AI tools, showing this isn't just about the future. This is kind of the current reality of the market. I want to break down how developers are putting AI to work. So code generation is the big one. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Leads the way at 85%. This number might even be higher at this point. This includes everything from completing a simple function to suggesting entire code blocks. 77% use AI for research and learning. Again, I said at the beginning, this is something I'm really excited about, showing that it's not just about coding. It's more about understanding and problem solving. And as developers, that's what we do. We are problem solvers. And 54% usage for debugging and testing represents a growing trust in AI for quality assurance. What I want to point out here is notice how the use cases complement rather than replace developer expertise. AI is acting as an enhancer of developer productivity or developer capabilities, right? So what are we going to get into today? I have some AI tips and tricks incorporated into my daily workflow, and I want to share those with you. I'll share some kind of key takeaways at the end, what you can kind of walk away from this with. And as I said at the beginning, my hope is that you walk away from this with a few practical tips you can kind of incorporate into your day-to-day workflow. Some of these may be general and you're probably already doing them, but I know there's always somebody in the room who may not know that thing. So some of these I'm going to go ahead and cover, and hopefully you learned something new today. That's always my plan. All right. So my AI-powered developers workflows. I want to make a couple assumptions first. So I'm going to make these assumptions. You're probably familiar with generative AI assistants. You've used ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini. You're probably even using some in the form of like an IDE coding assistant, whether it's GitHub Copilot or Junie or Cursor or Windsurf. We're not going to go too deep into these. I do have a really nice Junie example since we're on the IntelliJ live stream today at the end. But most of this is just kind of things that I use AI for every day. And from a warning perspective, anything that we talk about today, we need to be sure that we're thinking about privacy and security. We don't want our proprietary code, our internal documentation leaked out to some of the big major LLMs out there. So this is something you always need to be thinking about, especially in a corporation. Talk to your legal and compliance departments around risks of data handling and storage. There's also output risks with AI that I don't think people really think about, right? We know that the LLMs can hallucinate and sometimes make up things. And you may think that's just harmless at some point, but if we're blindly accepting this as the truth, this can lead to security issues. We also get some very biased or inappropriate responses at time, and I want us to be cognizant of that as we're starting to use these more and more. Okay, so my number one tip is learning how to talk to robots. Among all the advice I shared today, I think this is probably one of the most important tips as we get into this AI era. learning how to effectively communicate with AI systems, whether you're a complete beginner or experienced user. Mastering how to craft clear, effective prompts will dramatically improve your results. So let's just talk through a couple tips on learning how to talk about prompt engineering. Now, I'm not a fan of the term prompt engineering. It feels very gatekeepy to me, like it's not a skill we can all learn, when in reality, it's just about clear communication, which is something we can all develop, right? Structure determines success. Giving context, examples, or specific instructions to an LM will help. I like to think of this as teaching, not commanding. Don't do this. Like, I'm trying to teach you what I'm trying to get out of this. So bad prompt, hey, write a blog post about AI. That's very, very vague, right? I think we know this by now. We got to be more specific about that. Hey, write a technical blog post explaining neural networks to junior developers, focusing on practical examples, including code samples in Python, and keep it under 1,000 words. This is much more specific. We're asking it, or we're teaching it what we want it to do, right? Here's the subject. Here is the audience for this blog post. I want you to mix theory and practical examples. I'm giving you a word count to keep it under. So now we've kind of done this. And again, this is how we work with other people, right? You wouldn't just go over to someone's desk and say, hey, write me a blog post about AI. That would be very open-ended, and they would probably be like, what? Okay, well, I need some more information than that, right? So we got to be very specific with what we're trying to accomplish. And I have an article on the bite-sized AI on this if you want to take a look. So again, be specific. Write a 500-word blog post for sustainable gardening for beginners is way better than write about gardening. I like this, using examples. I want an email that sounds professional but friendly, like, here's an example of something that I'd like you to start off with. Giving it context. As the marketing manager for a small local business, I need to. Now it has context on what kind of position you're coming from with whatever task you're asking it to do. We can be very specific with request formats. Hey, I want this in a bulleted list, or I want this in Markdown, or I want this in a table format. However you need this to be outputted, make sure you use that in your prompt. Iterate and refine. This is very important. The first blog post, the first kind of prompt that you give it may not be the desired. You may not get the desired output, right? So this is an iterative process. We need to refine and get better at this and reiterate on this, right? And then save what works. I like to keep a collection of really effective prompts and reuse those. And one of the ways that I do this is some of these tools like Claude has a way to create projects. And a project is, hey, this is one of the workflows I use. So for example, I create a YouTube video. I will give it a transcript and I will ask it to help me write a title and a description. This is something that's very tedious that I don't really need to do. An LM can look at a transcript and write a really good description of it. But I have some project instructions and I say this is the prompt that I give you. I would not want to write this prompt every single time I have a transcript that I want to hit it. So I save these project instructions. What I end up doing is just dropping a transcript into Claude and boom, it spits out some really good information. Now that may not be the final result, but it's a really good start for me. So again, save prompts that kind of worked for you. Some advanced tips, you can structure your prompts. So again, you can zero-shot prompt, which is basically just, hey, do this. But if there are a chance that you can provide examples, there's something called few-shot prompting. Here are some examples. So classify these sentences as positive or negative, and then give it some examples. This one is positive. This one is negative. Now go ahead and bulk classify this list of sentences that I have. You can do things like chain of thought. You can organize these. One really good technique is to kind of use something like XML tags to structure these longer prompts. So you can say hey, I want you to go ahead and create a introduction, a conclusion, and 3 main points, right? So using XML tags to kind of break up longer prompts helps the LM kind of understand what you're doing. And then you can use something like task decomposition. Hey, I break this down. First, summarize the key points of this, then identify counter arguments. Finally, synthesize both perspectives. There are a lot of large language models out there. There are a lot of different companies with LLMs, and it seems like every week a new one comes out. This week has been no different, right? So one size does not always fit all. There might be different large language models for different tasks. So I would always say kind of experiment with them. Try to find out for your use case what different large language models work for what you're working on. And then from a prompt engineering aspect, there are some really good guides out there. A couple came out recently. OpenAI released a GPT 4.1 prompting guide. This is a really good one. There's a prompt engineering guide from Google, and then promptingguide.ai is also another good resource. So number one tip, this is very important in the age of AI, is learning how to effectively communicate with the large language models. All right, number two, now that we know a little bit more about prompt engineering and that we need to supply as much information as possible, and that this is a very iterative process, I wouldn't go over and I don't want, have you ever been on like a Slack with a coworker and you're like trying to explain a problem to them? You're like typing and typing and typing. And finally you go, can we just hop on a call? Because this is a lot. Like, I don't want to explain all of this to you. The same goes for LLMs. Like, I'm not just write a blog post for AI. I'm getting into the details of this. So you can use dictation to basically iterate over this process with the large language models. So I've done this beforehand, but on macOS, there's a way to go ahead and set it up in your settings. I'm sure there's a way on Windows as well. There's also tools out there that can help you with this. Having a good microphone helps because I'm speaking into a good mic now, so it's going to pick this up. But instead of coming in here and like writing out this long prompt on like what I'm trying to build, I can use voice dictation. So I just have a keyboard shortcut on my keyboard to go ahead and start this. Please write a new Spring Boot app using JDK 24, Spring Boot 3.4.4, and Maven. This application should provide a full REST API with CRUD resources to do with and the domain model is going to be something around posts or to-dos. So again, that was, let me stop that. But you can see the process there of kind of still going. Let's see if we can refresh that. Okay, so that can be a very long process of having to type all that out. I just like having a conversation, and I can come in here now and fix like some spelling problems if I want to, but this gets me a really long way. So I'm gonna see if I can get out of here. Let's just do that. So I like using this, and because it's a keyboard shortcut on my machine, I can do this wherever that's possible. So that wasn't just ChatGPT. If I'm on Anthropic or Google Gemini, whenever I'm kind of iterating over this process with a large language model, I like to prompt with my voice. All right, one more, and then we'll kind of break and see if there's any questions here. But I said this at the beginning, I love to learn almost to a fault. And I want to talk about a couple of specific ways developers can use AI to learn. So for junior developers, I like using this to break down concepts. Hey, let's get this in simpler terms, getting multiple explanation until one really clicks, right? Everybody learns different. The one answer in the documentation may not be the way that you learn. So being able to say like, hey, I want theory, like how do I do this? Explain this to me like on 5, or explain this in this terms. Like we can get something broken down over and over again until one finally clicks. So, hey, explain closures in JavaScript like you're explaining it to someone who just learned functions. Now you can follow up, okay, well now explain it with a practical example. So the mix of theory and practical examples that you can get out of this really kind of helps. Understanding code. Walk me through this code line by line. I don't really understand what's happening here. So I really like this one. And as I said at the beginning, a learning path. Ask for a personalized learning path on something that you're trying to learn. So I'm going to show an example of this. If I go over to Claude, as I said, I have these kind of projects set up, and I have these different ones that I've already asked, so we don't have to like ask them all here today. But I basically gave it a learning path that said, I'd like to learn Spring Boot. It's a little bit overwhelming because it can do like all these different things, but I just want to build a REST API that talks to a database. Give me a learning path on like what I could do. So it breaks it down and says like, hey, and I didn't even get specific with how much time I have to learn. You could even say like, hey, I only have like a day or 2 days. But this says like, hey, if you want to get new to Spring, like these are some things that you can do to like learn. So I really like that as kind of a learning path. Something else we can do for kind of senior developers, we can deep dive. So compare the performance implications of different state management solutions in React. Explain the architectural differences between REST and gRPC. So now I have this kind of learning buddy that I can just kind of bounce ideas off of. I can use it as a pattern discovery. One of the ways I love it, staying current. What are the performance benefits of using virtual threads in Java? Like I've heard about this virtual thread thing. Well, why should I use it? When should I use it? When does it make sense? So for both junior developers and senior developers, there are some really good ways to kind of learn with AI. And so I don't know about you, but this is what I feel like on a day-to-day basis right now. If I want to learn something, I can. I have never published, so I am deep into the Apple ecosystem. I have a phone, a MacBook, a watch, TV, all the things, right? We have a kind of family subscription on it. I've never published an application to the iOS store. I've opened Xcode before, never really wrote anything significant. But I can say with absolute confidence that if you asked me to launch an app on the App Store this week, barring like if I gets rejected and that whole process, right? I could do that. I don't have an idea to like launch an app on the App Store, but if I wanted to, I have enough experience with software development that I could use AI to kind of make that happen right away. And that, to me, that's just like really exciting. It opens up a whole bunch of possibilities for me. So I hope that kind of does the same for you. All right, before we get on to reading code, Mala, do we have any questions we want to jump into?
Hey, Dan, we have a lot of questions, but not really related to what you just covered. It was more about using the AI assistant and tuning in IntelliJ ideas. So folks are really
Gotcha.
excited about that and
Okay.
curious to know about a lot of details. So I will let you move forward with your session.
Okay, sounds good. All right, number 4, reading code. Here's a surprising fact. Many in the industry claim that on average, developers spend roughly 10 times as much time reading code as they do writing it. In other words, for every hour spent actively typing out new code, about 10 hours are devoted to understanding, reviewing, and otherwise reading code. Yet, how many of us actively work on improving our code reading skills? Something to think about. So we can use this as code comprehension strategies. I paste some unfamiliar code and say, explain this code's purpose and main functionality. What design patterns are being used here? What are the key dependencies and data flows? I can do something like, hey, break down complex functions. I want to break down this function into logical steps. Are there any potential side effects that are going on in this particular block of code? So we can get some really good comprehension into some of the code that we're using. So I'm going to show another example of this over here. And I have a code, reading code comprehension. So I have this, I basically said the same thing that I had in the bullets, explain this code, what are design patterns being used, what are the key dependencies and data flows. So I gave it a bunch of Java code, and right away it says, okay, the main purpose of this is this code implements a caching layer for a data services with these main features. Right away, this has probably saved me an hour of kind of digging around and trying to figure out what things are connected, what's going on. Now I know at a high level what the purpose of this code is. That gives me context. Now I can start scanning through code and start understanding things a little bit better. If you are new to like design patterns and you didn't even know that this thing called a caching data service decorator uses the decorator pattern, this is a great way to learn. Oh, here are all the different patterns being used in this code. If I've never used a strategy pattern before, now's the opportunity to kind of learn from a real world example, right? It defines some of the key dependencies. Here are the dependencies. Here's what the data flow looks like. And then a little bit more. So again, love using this for kind of reading code and understanding things. What I wish that I had these tools when I was just getting started, because some of the hardest tasks for me were getting caught up on a new code base or understanding legacy code, like trying to put your mind into the developers that wrote this code to begin with. And I love using it for this perspective. Like, hey, what problem was this code likely trying to solve, right? Because again, before I really can comprehend what's going on here, I need to know at a high level, like, what is this even doing? Why might the original developer have chosen this approach? We could give it some context, like, hey, this was written 10 years ago, and then it might be able to infer, like, hey, what was going on at the time, and give us some more insight into that. Then we can say, all right, well, are there opportunities to kind of improve this code? Are there maintainability concerns? Like maybe we don't want to refactor this whole thing, but are there things that we can fix to make it more maintainable? Is there ways to refactor this code using modern best practices? Now, again, we may not want to refactor an entire legacy code base, but hey, give me the top 3 places where we could really improve this code base. So I'll show you another example I have of that. Reading code, legacy code example. So again, I asked, what are the maintainability? How could this be refactored? And so it goes in and it analyzes it and says, hey, yeah, we do have some security vulnerabilities. There's a hard-coded database credentials in plain text. We don't want to do that. There's SQL injection vulnerability. There's unsecured email configuration, poor separation of concerns. We have classes trying to do way too many things. Error handling, code maintainability. And then it goes and says, hey, here's some ways that we could refactor it to kind of use more modern practices. And again, maybe we're not rewriting an entire database or an entire code base, but we could get some, hey, give me the top 3, the best kind of big wins that we can get. And this is a way you can kind of make yourself very productive and helpful on kind of legacy code bases. Okay, documentation. One of my go-to use cases for AI is for documentation and technical writing. So if you go into a code base, maybe legacy, current, and there isn't a lot of inline documentation, you can generate class, function, or method documentation. This is a really good way to, again, if you're new to a project, kind of contribute right away. Tests and documentation, things developers don't like writing, but using AI, we can kind of assist in that and improve the code base right away. Explaining complex algorithms and logic flows. Creating usage examples in sample code. Like we have all this code, but as a new developer, I don't know how to use this code. Can you give me some like usage of how to like get started and some sample code that will help out? I don't know about you, but one of the things that's really frustrating is working with all these different APIs within an organization, and some of them aren't documented. Again, a quick win is we can go in and document API endpoints and all the parameters that it accepts, and this really helps out teams. I use this for technical writing. Assistance is the keyword. Assistance. Don't write everything. Use it as an assistant. But we can do things like improve clarity and consistency of existing documentation. So we can update existing documentation. Maybe we have some style guidelines and we want to make sure everything is kind of conforming to those guidelines. We can do that. We can suggest better wording or explanation. I like this a lot. I like being able to take some technical documents and rewrite them for a different audience. So like we have technical docs, but maybe we're not talking to developers. Maybe we're talking to end users. Can we take this and kind of conform that to what an end user might use it for? And converting documentation from one format to another. Maybe I have documentation in Markdown and I want it as HTML, or I want it in Markdown and I want to have it in like ASCII doc. However we want to convert that, we can take that documentation and convert it to a different format. And obviously creating new documentation. Now I do this a lot. I write a lot of demos for just kind of showing off a feature. If you go over to my GitHub, github.com/danvig, I have like 350 repos. They're just, a lot of them are just like simple examples. But I don't want users to get to that repo and have no idea like what this is for. Like it's probably for a post I've written or a video I've done or a presentation I've given. And let's be honest, it's a mundane task that I just don't want to spend the time doing. It's just important that there is some documentation there. So I will hand a repo over to a large language model and say, write me a README for this based on my repo. Now you can do this. This has gotten much better lately. So things like Claude from Anthropic, there's a way to kind of hook up to GitHub and then like pick a repo and pick which files you want to include on that. Google Gemini has a feature that allows you to upload a code base to it. Model Context Protocol can help with this as well. But early on, like this wasn't available. So I ended up writing this kind of content generator that would either look at a GitHub repo of mine or look at a local repo of mine and kind of put all the right code into like a single file that I could upload to, say, Claude, and then say, write me a README. And there are other tools out there. Git ingest is one. So you can take like the GitHub URL and just kind of change it and basically get an LLM friendly text file that you can then ask questions to an LLM about. Now, I'll show you an example of this. So again, I have different projects within Claude because they all do different things. And this one is called a GitHub README generator. And I don't want to go in and basically provide this large prompt every single time of like how I want a README generated. I have these system instructions here that basically go in and say, hey, you're a technical writer specializing in writing documentation. Here's some context. Here's how I want the README to be kind of structured. So it has this specific structure. Here's the tone and style. Here's how I want it formatted. Here's how I want code formatted. The output should be in Markdown format because I'm going to use Markdown. So there's all these things that we can give it. And this really helps me because now what I can do is I can just go in here and say from GitHub, I can pick the latest project that I'm working on. I can say add files. Once those are added, I don't need to write a prompt. That prompt's kind of already been written for me. I can just hit go and it's going to go through, look at my repo and create a README for me. And so this works out really great. From my perspective, I'm writing a demo, so I look at my whole repo, but maybe you're just creating a new feature and you just want to look at like a little subset of that feature. You can kind of select the files that are appropriate and say, hey, you know, write an introduction to this new feature and kind of how it works. So this is using this as, whether it's a technical writer, writing documentation, help me with a blog post, has been really kind of a game saver for me. All right, number 6, building tools. One of the things I love about being a programmer is being able to solve my own problems. One of the ways I can do that is by building tools, and AI has really, really helped me out here. I'll be honest, this has probably been one of my favorite main drivers of AI. And what I want to say to this is that if you're building tools for yourself, it doesn't need to be some super polished tool that you share with the world. This could just be something very useful for me that I never share, something that solves a problem. You know, one of the things we talk about this here, like with kind of agents being the talk of everything that's going on, right? Is if you find yourself doing some repetitive task over and over again, I know I'm talking to a group of programmers, so you probably already know this, but like that should like starts sounding alarms in your brain going, wait a minute, I don't want to do this thing over and over again. How can I go ahead and build something for myself to do this? I like this quote from Sam Altman. People are tool builders with an inherent drive to understand, create, which leads to the world getting better for all of us. He had a really good blog post called 3 Observations. Go ahead and check it out if you want. But we can build all types of tools, right? Data processing. I want to write some tool that analyzes custom logs and extracts specific patterns and anomalies. I want to write some data format converters. In our development workflow every day, maybe we can write some Git hooks for automating code formatting and validation, or code documentation generators. If we're talking about API testing tools, I want to write some kind of mock server for my development environment. I want to write some test data generators. We'll see an example of that later. When it comes to kind of code quality and maintenance, maybe I want to write some custom linting rules for our project-specific conventions. Maybe I want to write like type definition generators. And then DevOps and deployment, maybe some kind of deployment checklist automation, infrastructure cost analysis. The list kind of goes on, but just think about some tools that like maybe you wouldn't have written in the past that now become much more accessible because of AI. So practical tools you can build CLI tools to streamline whatever workflow that you're doing. Again, if there's something over and over again, see if you can write a CLI tool to kind of streamline that. One of my favorites here is IDE or text editor plugins. We're with our friends at IntelliJ today. So like, have you ever needed something inside of IntelliJ that isn't there? And there's all these great plugins, right? Maybe there's one plugin out there that kind of does it, but maybe you need it done a different way. I think in the past, I would have been not scared to write something like that, but like, do I want to invest the time that it would probably take for me to learn how IntelliJ plugins work? I got to research that. And like, there's a lot that goes into that. I'm not an expert in that domain, but now like I can feed it some documentation that on how to build an IntelliJ plugin, and I'm up and running, right? Browser plugins. I've never written a Chrome plugin. I'm sure I probably could do that today if I needed to. You can do reporting tools. I actually, for my job, have to kind of do a bunch of reporting on content I create. I wrote my own tool to kind of do that. And then, And then your favorite tools. So if you use a bunch of tools, maybe you have a favorite tool that you use and there's a way to extend it. This is actually a use case that I ended up using this for. I don't know how many people out there are familiar with Raycast. I'm a huge fan of Raycast. I use it. It's your shortcut to everything. It's basically a Spotlight replacement if you're on Mac. So Command Space is now, I think mine's Option Space, but brings up this window and it's a shortcut. I want to open a particular app. I want to do some conversion. I want to open a website. There's a whole bunch of plugins to do all the things right there. And I just find it makes me more productive. And so I got to thinking, there's the Spring Initializer. This is kind of the basis for creating a new Spring Boot app. You can bootstrap an app. This is also the endpoint that hits is also what all of the IDE tools use. So IntelliJ hits this endpoint to create a new Spring Boot app. So I got to thinking, I want to create a Raycast extension to do this. So I looked through the documentation, and you have to use React for this. I have nothing against React. I use Vue. I've used Angular before. I've looked at React, just don't know it. Again, could I, if I had the time, learn React and learn how to build kind of components in React? Yeah. Then I need to learn like how do you build extensions in Raycast? There's a lot that goes into this, right? I just don't have the time for it. I have priorities that I want to focus on. But with AI, I was able to kind of feed it some documentation, feed it some other examples of Raycast extensions, something similar to the one that I'm trying to build. And I was able to create a Raycast extension and launch it on their app market. So this is free to use if you want to. I'm going to bring this over here real quick. You can see here, I can just type in Spring Initializer. And from here, I can go in and create a new Spring Boot project right in Raycast. So just a little kind of cool tool that is free and something that I was interested in doing, but in the past, I probably wouldn't have done it, right? Okay, number 7, working with data. So AI isn't just for generating content, it's your instant data engineer. You can use it to transform formats, generate code from raw data, clean data sets, and build database solutions in minutes instead of hours. This is a really another great use case. So I use this a lot for data transformation. I want to transform data between formats. Here's a CSV file, turn this into JSON. Here's an XML file, turn this into JSON, right? Data to code. I have this huge JSON object. Turn this into a Java record for me. Is there something missing, or why is this data invalid? I've scanned through it myself, but I can't seem to find the anomaly. Can you find it for me? Optimal data structures based on your use case, data validation rules, and more. I want to actually show a quick example of one of those things I mentioned. So if we go back over here and we look at JSON, so I have this JSON block and I said, hey, I want some Java records out of this. So this is a user. So we have some information here. A user has an address has a geo. We also have a company in here. And I don't want to manually create these Java records. Do it for me. So I ended up passing this into an LM, and here we go. We get all of the records for that JSON data. It even gives us an example how to construct a new user. I could even follow this up with, hey, put all of these records into a single class because they're all kind of related, or into so I don't have to like have 5 different files going around, right? So I use it for data transformation a lot. I use it also for generating fake data. So I want to create some realistic test data that matches the schema requirements. I used to like manually create like a couple of records in like each table. But now what if we have 10 tables and we want hundreds of records or thousands of records, and we want localization and we want edge cases to kind of stress test our application? We can do this quickly with AI. So I'm going to show you one more example of that. So in here, I went in and said, I gave it some very specific data like, hey, create a JSON data set of 10 users for an e-commerce app. Each profile should include this. And then I got very, very specific with what I wanted in that data. And what came out is a collection of users based on those specifications. So I really like this for creating test data. I write a lot of demo apps, so this turns out to be very helpful for me. I've used projects in the past, like there's faker projects out there that can kind of fake data. And now I just kind of replace that with this because I get much more specific data without having to kind of write the code that like loops over 100 records and creates some fake data for me. I also like this for database and query work. So hey, write some SQL queries for this complex operation that I'm trying to perform. I want to design databases and schemas and the table relationships. Maybe I handed a whole bunch of data, whether it's a CSV file or a JSON file, and say, hey, I need the schema file for this to go ahead and create a new database. Again, as someone who creates demos a lot, this is very helpful. I have some existing queries, and they're not working so great. Can you optimize these for better performance? Another one is, hey, I'm switching from MySQL to Postgres. Like, can you write a conversion script to switch over to that for me? And again, migration scripts. There are different tools out there, but hey, I'm trying to create this migration script to move from this schema to this schema. Go ahead and help me with that. I've even seen some systems out there that will allow you to take natural language and query a database. And I think that's like really, really cool. All right, 2 more, and then we'll get to some questions. Number 8, running models locally. So we've talked about some of the privacy and security concerns with sending all of our data to these cloud models, right? Despite OpenAI's name, their models aren't open. You can't just download them onto your own machine. I think they announced a couple weeks ago or last week that they are going to come out with an open weight model at some point. But right now, something like OpenAI or Claude or Google Gemini, you can just download on your machine. And there's some real pros and benefits to running models on your local machine. So from a privacy and data security, if we're working on something in our organization, we can have sensitive data that never leaves our machine, right? We're just trying to MVP something that's working with our private data. I don't want it to out into the world. I can do that. This helps with compliance with data protection regulations like GDPR and HIPAA, right? Performance, lower latency. I don't have any more network calls. Everything's right on my machine. I get consistent response times, ability to run offline. I could do this on a plane if I wanted to. Development and testing, easier to debug and development iterations. Local testing without API keys or quotas. From a cost perspective, no cost, right? There's no API request fees. We get our predictable computing costs. From a customization and control, we have the ability to full control over the versions. We can fine tune and customize these models. So there are a lot of benefits to running LLMs locally, whether it's in production or on our development machine. There are a couple ways to do this. One is Ollama. So you can use Ollama. Go to ollama.com. You can check out the models and you can download a model on your local machine. Now, this is going to depend on the system requirements that you have. I've downloaded just kind of small models. They're like 5 gig, 6 gig, but nothing really big. So you can use Ollama for this. If you use Ollama and fire it up, you'll basically be in a terminal, using the terminal to kind of interact with the large language model. But this is also something you can use, whether it's this one or the next one I'm going to show you, that you can use with something like Spring AI. So Spring AI can talk to a lot of the large language models out there. It can also talk to these local running models. But if you don't want to kind of run on the command line, there are projects out there like the Open Web UI. This gives you this nice chat interface to work with. Recently, Docker came out with something called Docker Model Runner. This is only for Mac with Apple Silicon right now. I think this is going to kind of branch out into other, but this is just for that for now. But this allows you from your command line to use Docker. If you have Docker Desktop installed, you can just say Docker model run and then say like AI Gemma 3, and that will download Gemma 3 onto your local machine and run it via Docker. So here we can see an example of that. I say Docker model run, and then I'm in an interactive chat. I can say, hey, what's an interesting fact about Docker? And then it goes through and spits out a response. So I do want to show you an example of running this on my local machine. So let's get rid of this. And here we see that from Ollama, I just said Ollama list. And if I wanted to, I can say Ollama run Gemma 3. And so now I'm into that interactive console. What is Ollama? I can ask it a question. I'll get a response back. But again, maybe I don't want to use the command line for that. I can, let me bring my browser back up. And move this over. I can use something like Web UI. So it has all of the models that are running on my local machine here. I can say Gemma 3. What is Ollama? And it will give me a familiar chat interface to work with, right? So I love running models locally on my machine and using tools like this to kind of give me that familiar chat interface. All right, one more here. And that is guiding AI coding tools. So there are a lot of really great AI coding tools out there. I want to give you some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of them. And then we'll wrap this up with an example of how to guide an AI agent to get kind of your desired output. So what's like the evolution of these tools, kind of picking the right tool for the right job, right? So we have standalone chatbot assistants. These are AI models that are accessed via conversational interfaces outside of the IDE. Developers usually interact through natural language prompts and receive code or advice in return. but integration with coding environments is manual. These are tools that we're all probably using today: ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Claude. Then there's inline IDE assistants. These are tools that kind of integrate directly within development environments. They give us some real-time code suggestions, even code completions within your editor, and they're often augmented by an IDE chat or documentation features. The developer kind of remains in control here, with the AI acting as a pair programmer embedded in this workflow. Examples of this might be GitHub Copilot, JetBrains Assistant, or Amazon Code Whisperer. Then we have this other kind of grouping of agentic AI IDs. And this is really kind of the cutting edge, right? Where AI acts as a proactive partner that can manage multiple steps autonomously, which is kind of the keyword there. These are specialized IDEs that don't just kind of wait for you to prompt. It takes initiative to suggest, refactor, and coordinate changes across your code base. These are things like Cursor and Windsurf and JetBrains Junie. So I'm not going to read through all of this. I'll give you the slides. You can kind of look at this, but it kind of breaks these down, the different dimensions, and when you might pick the right one for the right job. I want to talk about some tips, though, for getting the most out of your tools that you're using. And I think this is a very important one. You are the pilot, not a passenger. AI assists, you own the final code. Don't blindly accept suggestions. Treat this like a junior programmer, guide it, and review its work critically. I like to review and refactor rigorously with this. Bugs. AI can and will generate incorrect or inefficient code. This can cause security issues. Actively check for vulnerabilities, injection flaws, insecure defaults, vulnerable dependencies, etc. Make sure this meets your project standards for style, maintainability, and performance. I would say apply the same rigorous testing to AI-generated code that you would your own. You want to provide clear, specific, detailed prompts. We talked about that before in our kind of prompt engineering section. AI models train on a vast number of open source projects with various licenses. So that's something you need to think about. Understand it, don't just copy it. Take the time to comprehend what AI suggests in a particular piece of code. So there's this new wave of vibe coding, which again, I'm not against. I understand that, like, if someone is not a developer and they wanted to create something, this is an awesome time to be alive, an awesome opportunity to like create things. But as a developer, if somebody who's been a developer, you really want to take the time to understand what it's suggesting, why it's doing that. And if you have domain knowledge, being able to say no, like, I don't want it that way. I need it another way, right? And understand that AI may use outdated information. Okay, I have an example of this in Junie. So here in IntelliJ, again, Junie's kind of out of preview now. Anybody can get access to it. I went ahead and asked it to write an application that talks to this JSON placeholder service and gets a collection of posts. I gave it a URL. It can look at that and kind of create an application for us. So I went in there and it did some things. Like, it created a really good app. It has a post controller here. Here's the request mapping. It's even kind of documenting what it's doing. It created a post service. I noticed here that, like, this post URL is kind of hard coded here. I probably would want that to be like some type of configuration. I see that it's using the REST template. There's nothing wrong with that, but my preference is to use the REST client. I see that it's created a class to model our post. Again, nothing wrong with this code, but I have some conventions. I'd like this to be a record. It even created some tests for us. So my tip here is that with a lot of these IDE coding assistants, these agents, if you will, you have ways that you can kind of guide them and say, like, yeah, like, that application worked, but like, our convention is this, or my preference is this. And so with Cursor and Windsurf, you can do this. With Junie, you can do this. You can create a .Junie directory and put in something called a guidelines.markdown. So this guidelines really is just some instructions. This could be as little as possible or as much in depth as you want it to be, right? So here I'm saying, okay, if you create a Spring Boot app, I want you to use the latest LTS version of JDK. I want you to use the latest version of Spring Boot, and I want you to use Maven. I'm okay with the way you created that project structure before, but I actually like to use package by feature instead of package by layer. And I gave it an example. Like, this is how I want things created. I don't want you using this kind of package by layer structure. I have things for data access from an HTTP client. Favor the REST client in Spring Framework 6. I like using that. From a Java language perspective, use Java records and favor immutability where appropriate. And here are some Spring Framework best practices. I could get much more exhaustive with this, but this was just a quick run. And I didn't even write all of this. So I went to a large language model and I said, this is what I'm trying to do. Here are some things that I want to do. Go ahead and add some other kind of best practices if you want. So when I did that and asked the same prompt to Junie, I got a much different application. Everything is packaged by feature. My post is now a record, not a class. In my post service, I'm using the REST client. And again, I could have done much more, but that was kind of just a quick run. So if you're using these IDE tools like Junie, come up with some guidelines on how you or your team likes to write applications and take advantage of that feature, guiding the software, not kind of letting it just write whatever and click OK. All right, just a couple of key takeaways and we'll wrap this up. AI is a developer multiplier. Again, you don't need to use it 100% of the time. You don't use it 0% of the time, right? Find the right balance. This can really help developers be productive. I don't see it replacing them. Maybe in years to come, I don't know. But right now, I just look at it as a really great tool in my tool belt that can help me be more productive or automate repetitive tasks. Always review and understand AI-generated code. If you're in an organization and you're not just kind of hacking on something for yourself, you have to keep security in mind, especially with sensitive information. Don't just start uploading all of your own documentation or your private documents. Use it as a learning tool. I love to learn, not just generating code. We saw a whole bunch of tips of things you can use this for today. I like to start small with a well-defined task and scale up as you can. Again, some quick wins: begin with documentation and code review tasks. Integrate AI tools into your existing workflows. And as you start to find prompts that work, as you get better at prompting, make sure you kind of save some of those reliable prompts for common tasks. All right, so that's me. Here's some contact information. You can contact me if you want to learn more or have a question for me. But with that, we'll see if we have any questions we can answer.
Hey Dan, first of all, amazing presentation. Thank you so much for that. And
Thank you.
before I ask any questions, everyone watching, please share your feedback on this session. We would love to hear from you what you think about the sessions, and we do read the feedback, and that really helps us to make the next sessions that we plan to make them better. Brad, there was a lot of questions. A lot of them were about Junie and the AI assistant in IntelliJ IDEA. And
We're
we
all
have,
new to it, so we're all trying to
yeah,
learn.
yeah, absolutely. And Margaret and Siva were very kind and they were answering a lot of those questions.
Oh,
So
hi. Thank you.
I'll pick up a couple of questions which are more generalized question. And before I do that, I really like your sections about where do we use the AI agents and the tooling, and it's about solving your problems. So what I see that is like whenever there's something that needs to be done, but we are not really, we don't want to invest our energy in doing that. We can delegate that to an AI agent.
Yep.
So the code about being the pilot and not a passenger was right apt. Like you know some things need to be done, but you don't want to do it, so
Right.
delegate and be in control of what you get. Say no, and the guidelines example was amazing. So
Oh,
that was great.
and and like, yeah, I mean, we do so many tasks as developers. Like there, I'm sure everybody has like two or three things that they just find like
Mm,
these are these mundane tasks that I do all the time. AI is
yes,
helping me fix those, not so that
yes,
it can replace me as a developer, but now I can
absolutely.
focus on things that actually matter to me and my company rather than these
Mm.
kind of like mundane, busy work type of things that I do all the time.
Right. And when developers talk to me about this question or doubt, I kind of talk to them like, how do we use the vehicles that we have? So I know I have to go to office and I can walk to the office, or I could
Yeah,
take my car or a flight. So I know where I'm going to, but I could do that with the help of that machine a bit
right.
faster, a lot more faster. So,
Yep.
so that's how probably they could be using. So this is a question. I know your whole presentation was about this one. Would AI make us more dumb?
I would agree with that. If we are using it in the sense of, I'm just going to ask it to do something and click a bunch of buttons saying accept, 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 and not
Mm,
really understanding what it's doing. So I do
yes.
have this fear for junior developers.
Mm,
Not so much for senior developers because they've been around long enough, but the way I learned was I would try to build something. I would write out code, it wouldn't work. I would scratch my head, I would scour the internet for an answer.
mm,
Oh, that's what's going on here. I did that wrong. I'd fix it, I'd run it, it works.
mm,
So that
mm,
process of failing and learning from that is one of the best teachers there are, right?
mm,
So I think we still need to do that, but we can just do that faster, right? Get into
right.
that loop of try something, didn't work. Let me ask AI, how can I improve this? Oh,
Mm,
that's what it fixed there. Okay, let me jot that down in my notes or remember that for next time. So there
mm,
is a way to use it to still keep learning all the time. But yeah, if we are just accepting, 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 and then walking away from the computer and not learning, then yeah, I have a big fear of that in the future.
right. So I wanted to kind of highlight the question, even though you had a very good detailed table about comparing the different kind of AI tooling that we have. And so yes, so my question would be, do you already have a link to the presentation that you had today already on, or we could add it to the description of this video? You can share that with
Yes,
me.
I
We'll
will
do
get
that.
it to you. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Eh,
ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini is really good. Grok is
mm,
another one. I would say that you have to like use a lot of these different large language models, and within ChatGPT, there's 15 different models you can use, right? Some are better than others, some are less expensive than others. You have to
mm,
find the right ones for what you're doing. So you got to go out there and experiment with different models. Like, hey, ask it a question, get a response. Which one do you think kind of is kind of vibing with you or giving you the desired output? I use
mm,
Claude a lot. So, well, I'll step back. In the past, I've used Claude a lot more for writing code. I feel like writing documentation and writing code, Claude 3.5, 3.7 has been really, really good at that.
mm,
Lately, that's kind of changing. Gemini Pro 2.5, I'm a really big fan of, does that. OpenAI just came out with GPT 4.1 and 4.1 mini, which they've kind of targeted towards developers because I think they saw that kind of developers were flocking elsewhere, and they said we need to make some models that are geared towards them as well.
mm.
So I don't just blindly use one. Try them, try the different ones out, try different models, see what one see which ones kind of work for you. And sometimes use cases matters. Like if you're doing something different than I'm doing, maybe a different model works better.
Yeah, absolutely. Use case, I think they make all the difference. And I understand that a lot of folks have this question whether to use this model or this tool instead of the other tool. And to add that, I would also like to add within the IDEs that we have, like IntelliJ IDEA, we have kind of AI sprinkled in the workflows that developers would have. Let's say, talk about a simple example of committing code to a repository. One thing that developers like to, they have to do but they kind of hate is writing the commit messages. So we have a small button right there which says generate the commit message using AI, and by clicking that you can get a commit message that actually makes sense instead of writing updated file or updated committed code or something like that. So then you don't really have to kind of choose between what you want to do. So you, the AI is integrated like in the workflows that we have as developers, so we don't have to look out for things.
Yep.
um, and the other question, yes, I believe you would have this a lot of times, how to write the right prompt. Is it like you try it out, you fail, you try it again, or are we already
Yes,
looking some
it is.
places where we have, yeah.
It is very much an iterative process. Starting with a prompt, seeing that it doesn't work, adding to the prompt. There are within some of the tools, like OpenAI has a back playground, Google has an AI studio, Anthropic
Mhm.
has a council. There are prompt generators in there. What are you trying to do? Here's the prompt. So a lot of the times, if I'm getting very complex with a prompt, I'm
Mhm.
asking AI to help me write that prompt first. So here's what I'm trying to achieve. Here's my audience. Here's the goal. Here's the output. Write me a prompt that will kind of help me get the desired output. So I would try it
Mhm.
yourself first, iterate on it. If you're still not getting the desired output, use the AI to help you write that prompt and then execute that prompt.
That makes a lot of sense. So there's another question. So there were kind of different questions which mentioned about using the MCP servers. I believe you
Yep.
already have some content out there where you used one of these. So if you could briefly
Yeah.
mention
So
that.
if you head over to my YouTube channel, I have a MCP introduction. I have one using with Spring. I'm releasing one with Java. And really, the point of MCP servers is all these large language models have limitations, right? They can't get access to current data. They can't find, I'm saying the large language models, not the tools. They don't know what day it is. They don't have access to current information. They can't search the web. But when you go to ChatGPT and ask it a question, you'll see it says searching the web. That is a tool that's been kind of integrated into the large language model. MCP is basically a protocol that allows us to define how we write clients and servers. So a client could be like Claude Desktop. They have a desktop app. And within Claude, I could plug in MCP servers. So you can write your own servers in this. And again, this is all about augmenting the large language model's limitations and being able to provide hooks into other systems. Like I want to be able to hook into GitHub, or I want to be able to hook into some type of system in our organization. How do I do that? MCP allows you to do that. It was started by Anthropic, but it is not just for Anthropic. This is kind of the protocol that everybody's leaning towards. And fun fact, the official Java SDK, if you go over to modelcontextprotocol.io, the official Java SDK was donated by the Spring team. So kudos there.
Thank you so much. So this is a question which I think I would be able to answer because we had tons of question about the AI assistant and Junie. So everyone watching, so with Junie, so Marit already had a question where Junie is an agent and you can perform a lot of tasks, whereas Dan showed in the last example where I could have a guidelines markdown file, and I could have a lot of instructions for Junie, and it couldn't spin out complete applications for you. And when we talk about the AI agent, it's not just the chat. So everything Dan showed in today's presentation, we already have that in within IntelliJ IDEA as the chat interface. which is the AI assistant, but also a lot of features of the AI assistant is sprinkled in throughout your workflows. As I said, you can explain code, you can write commit message, you can generate messages, not messages, methods via a prompt within your IDE window. So a lot of good things out there. And
Yeah, and think of Junie as like an assistant, somebody who's working with you, and you give them a task. They're not just gonna. They're just not gonna just start writing code, right? If you go into Junie and ask it to write that application that I did, we didn't get to see it today, but it starts to think about that. It's reasoning. It's going, okay, this is what the request is. How do I go about this? And it comes up with an entire plan. Okay, to accomplish this, here are all the tasks that I'm going to need to do. And as it completes tasks, you'll see it kind of get checked off. So it's creating a plan, it's executing on it. Whereas
yes,
an inline assistant is really just saying, hey, write me this function. I need a function to
yes.
do this.
Yes. So it all boils down to the use case that a developer
Yep.
would have and
Yep.
using the right tool. That makes sense. So this is probably the last question that I would take because we are already overboard the time. Thoughts, advice, pros and cons on fine-tuning base models for code base versus providing inference documentation to a full model.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of experience fine tuning models because I really haven't needed to.
Mhm.
Again, I am just kind of guiding the large language model to get my desired output. So
Mhm.
especially in these IDs like Cursor, Windsurf, and Junie, here's all the information. I'm giving it access to MCP servers to get up to date documentation. I'm giving it guidelines on how I write Java and Spring Boot applications. So I'm more or less guiding the models. I think fine tuning, at least from some of the customers that I've worked with, has been like, okay, these are the things that we're doing over and over again. I want this specific set of data that we're pulling in, that we're using the large language model to kind of refine a base model for. That's just not what I. That's not what I use it for. So I kind of lean the other way.
Okay, on that note, are there other questions? But I'm not going to take that because we are already running out of time. So thank you, Dan. Once again, it's always a pleasure to learn from you. And
Thanks for
before
having me.
we the pleasure is all ours. And before we say bye to the audience, here are the social links for both JetBrains and for Dan Vega. Look it up. You will find a lot of information here. And if you have any questions, queries, do not hesitate to connect with us. And thanks everyone for joining in today, for all your questions, for your comments, for listening and learning. I hope you learned a lot. I definitely did. And thanks for joining, and do not miss to subscribe to our channel. Dan, before we close the stream, any closing thoughts that you might have?
No, just well, I guess just go out and, like I said, use AI as a tool in your tool belt. Do not fear it
Mhm.
as a developer. I mean, who knows what the future holds, but we are not in the future. We are right now. So use it as a tool to be more productive. Find ways to use it that are not just writing code for you. And if it is writing code for you, don't blindly accept it. Try to understand what it's doing and learn from it.
That makes sense. And Junie, the coding agent from JetBrains, was launched publicly yesterday. So you can go and sign up and get free access for a month. Try it out, all the goodies that you get with it, the AI assistant, Junie, and of course, IntelliJ IDEA. I think the combination is amazing. And team that up with all the tips that Dan had today for you today. So that would make you a great developer. So thank you so much again, Dan. A
No
pleasure to
problem.
have you.
Thank you.
And with that,
Thanks,
uh,
everyone.
thanks everyone. Bye bye.